One two one two one two one two 5454. Let's see when I'm live. Okay, I think I'm live. Let me know if you could hear me. Let me know if you could see me. How's the audio? Breaking news, breaking news. Jordan Sheridan, Status Coup. I believe I'm live. Okay. I'll wait for some more folks to trickle in here on this Thursday, 5 days before the presidential election. Let me send out the text message so people know we are live. Hold on. Okay, Glenn. Seven 6 1 62210. One two one two. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Jordan Sheridan, breaking news in the media and politics world, I would say. Decided to come live because I think this is a pretty significant story. So let me wait till more viewers come in. I'm a little earlier than I normally am, so I want to give some folks time to trickle in here. Press the like button if you can. Press the share button if you can. Hold on. I'm going to let the folks in our members-only Discord know that I'm live. Live now. Press the like button. Press the share button. All those good things. Okay. Hey, Jordan, you should hire Glenn. I think he's going places. If only I had the money. If only, hey, I'd give it to Glenn. You want to run Status Coup? But unfortunately, we don't have the money. Just wait a minute or two. I want to let some more folks trickle in before I get started. Really, really surprising news in the world of media and politics. I'm probably going to share some things that I've never shared before, so you'll get some behind the scenes. Definitely. Smash that like button, share this live stream. Let's get this out to as many people as possible. I think this is a major story. Obviously, the election is the biggest story right now, but I think the trends of media and censorship are significant. And this story is definitely emblematic of that. So let me get started here. Again, please press the like button and share. And I'll talk about the GoFundMe in a little bit, but keep on supporting us. As this story is going to show, it is important than ever to support independent, actually independent media. If you can, support. If you have the means, support us. So, trucking along today, I just got my flu shot, and my arm is hurting. My beautiful wife makes me get flu shots. She's so smart. And I see what is really, just you weren't expecting this, but a tweet from Glenn Greenwald. Let me show you. Obviously, the co-founder of the Intercept, which is a pretty well-known, popular, independent outlet on the left, progressive. And he announced that he has resigned from the Intercept, saying the same trends of repression, censorship, and ideological homogeneity plaguing the national press generally have engulfed the media outlet I co-founded, culminating in censorship of my own articles. So he linked to, I guess, his explanation piece that he wrote in Substack. It's a long piece, but I'm going to read most of it, and we're going to go through it because I think it's very, very important to find out here what exactly happened and why this is so emblematic of the wider corporate censorship that's going on, but not only direct censorship, but corporate hijacking of the media. Obviously, Jen isn't on this stream. She's actually coming up, so we're going to be live tomorrow. And for a few days, we'll be live together. So I'm sure she's going to have thoughts of this. But Jen and I started Status Coup because we knew we would never, ever be able to do the in-the-field reporting that we believe needs to be done around the country on corruption, injustice, downtrodden communities at any corporate outlet. Hell, I was beginning, before I was fired from the Young Turks, I was beginning to be kind of reined back by the Young Turks on doing this in-the-field reporting. So we knew the trends of corporate media, and frankly, that independent media, or so-called independent media, was becoming more and more restrained. So let me read to you Glenn's piece, and we'll get into it. There's still some unknowns here, so we will share Glenn's version of the story and go from there. And keep pressing that like button. Super chats are welcome. The like button is right under the live stream. So this Glenn starts out his piece. Today, I sent my intention to resign from the Intercept, the news outlet I co-founded in 2013 with Jeremy Scahill and Laura Poitras, as well as from its parent company, First Look Media. The final precipitating cause is that the Intercept's editors, in violation of my contractual rights of editorial freedom, censored an article I wrote this week, refusing to publish it unless I remove all sections critical of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, the candidate vehemently supported by an all New York-based Intercept editors involved in this effort at suppression. The censored article, based on recently revealed emails and witness testimony, raised critical questions about Biden's conduct. Not content to simply prevent publication of this article at the media outlet I co-founded, these Intercept editors also demanded that I refrain from exercising a separate contractual right to publish this article with any other publication. So according to Glenn, not only did they refuse to publish it at the Intercept, but they refused to allow him, according to his contract, the right to publish it elsewhere. I had no objection to their disagreement with my views of what this Biden evidence shows. As a last-ditch effort to avoid being censored, I encouraged them to air their disagreements with me by writing their own articles that critique my perspectives and letting readers decide who is right, the way any confident and healthy media outlet would. But modern media outlets do not air dissent, they quash it. So censorship of my article, rather than engaging with it, was the path these Biden-supporting editors chose. The censored article will be published on this page shortly. My letter of intent to resign, which I sent this morning to First Look Media's President Michael Bloom, is published below. As of now, I will be publishing my journalism here on Substack, where numerous other journalists, including my good friend, the great intrepid reporter Matt Taibbi, have come in order to practice journalism free of the increasingly repressive climate that is engulfing national mainstream media outlets across the country. This was not an easy choice. I am voluntarily sacrificing the support of a large institution and a guaranteed salary in exchange for nothing other than a belief that there are enough people who believe in the virtues of independent journalism and the need for free disclosure who will be willing to support my work by subscribing. Like anyone with young children, a family, and numerous obligations, I do this with some trepidation, but also with the conviction that there is no other choice. I could not sleep at night knowing that I allowed any institution to censor what I want to say and believe. Least of all, a media outlet I co-founded with the explicit goal of ensuring this never happens to other journalists, let alone to me. Because I have written an article critical of a powerful Democratic politician vehemently supported by the editors in the imminent national election. So I want to take a pause there and keep pressing that like button. We got 440 people watching. 197 of you have pressed that like button. As Glenn talks about, corporate censorship is real, including right here on YouTube. Really, the only way we've been able to boost up the viewership is by boosting up the likes. For some reason, the more people that press the thumbs up button under the video, the more people that circulate. The more the video gets shown, the live stream gets shown in people's feeds. So, and thank you for the super chat. Gino Fast, $4.99. You should offer him a job. Join the coup, Glenn. Yes. Full disclosure. I mean, if you Google it, you could find it. Glenn Greenwald was making $500,000 a year at the Intercept. I don't think I could make a competitive offer to Glenn Greenwald, to tell you the truth. I'm just being honest. We would love to have him. I think I'm speaking for Jen. We would love to have Glenn Greenwald in any capacity. But we are a viewer-funded outlet, which, as you know, if you're a Status Coup viewer, we are completely viewer-funded. We were near 2,000 paid members, which is quite the accomplishment in less than 3 years. But COVID, we've lost a lot of members. So, unfortunately, as much here, I'm offering you, Glenn, come here, but I certainly couldn't pay you anywhere near what you were being paid at the Intercept. So, there's so many layers of this, and I'm going to read more of Glenn's piece. But I just want to be clear about, according to Glenn, and I have no reason to doubt what he's saying. He's not a liar, and he's always been factual. A lot of people can argue with his methods or his thinking, but nobody has challenged him on facts. He won a Pulitzer Prize for incredible reporting on Edward Snowden's NSA revelations. He's done great work on WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. So nobody could challenge that this is not somebody who would lie about what happened. So according to Glenn, the Intercept, which he co-founded with Jeremy Scahill, basically wouldn't publish a piece that he wrote critical of Joe Biden and exploring the Hunter Biden-Joe Biden story, which has been largely censored by the entire corporate media, and frankly, a lot of independent media has not covered it. And to its basic root, let me just tell you what to its basic root, because here at Status Coup, we have been very critical of the censorship of this story. At the most basic root, the New York Post, which is not Breitbart, they do have some journalists at the New York Post. Yes, 100%, it's conservative. They tend to be sensational, but they are not at the level of a Breitbart News. The New York Post reported, it feels like 10 years ago, but I think 2 weeks ago, Hunter Biden introduced his father, then Vice President Joe Biden, to a top executive at a Ukrainian energy firm less than a year before the elder Biden pressured government officials in Ukraine into firing a prosecutor who was investigating the company, according to emails obtained by the Post. The never before revealed meeting is mentioned in a message of appreciation that Vadim Pozarsky, I might be mispronouncing, an advisor to the board of Burisma, allegedly sent Hunter Biden on April 17, 2015, about a year after Hunter joined the Burisma board at a reported salary up to $50,000 a month. Quote, "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together. It's really an honor and pleasure," the email reads. An earlier email from May 2014 also shows Pozarsky, reportedly Burisma's number 3 executive, asking Hunter for, quote, "advice on how you could use your influence on the company's behalf." The blockbuster correspondence, which flies in the face of Joe Biden, saying that he's never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings, is contained in a massive trove of data recovered from a laptop. So, putting aside the fact that Rudy Giuliani is involved in this story, putting aside the fact that Steve Bannon is involved with this story, putting aside the fact that there's questions about where the emails, not the emails, but that they were found on a laptop that was dropped off to a computer software store, and the owner of the computer software store is reportedly a Trump advisor. Putting aside all that, yes, it was 100% an opposition research dump. The Democrats dump on the media opposition research to try and harm Republican candidates that they're facing. The Republicans strategically dump, including very, very, nefarious and, not so savory figures like Rudy Giuliani. They dump opposition research. And clearly, Rudy Giuliani, Steve Bannon, and Trump, who, as reports have shown, very much wanted this story out in the final weeks before the election, thinking it would be some type of smoking gun to damage Biden. Clearly, this was an oppo dump on trying to harm Joe Biden and hoping it would be picked up by the media. that doesn't mean there's no truth to it. And the number one thing that I have said that the corporate media has not said, the New York Post reports and showed the emails that Joe Biden met with essentially an advisor to Burisma's board, that Joe Biden met with this person, and then a year later, Joe Biden, as the vice president of the United States, actively tried to get a prosecutor in Ukraine fired. Let's take that piece by piece. Number one, just from the common sense perspective, why would Joe Biden, the vice president of the United States, give two? I'm trying not to get demonetized here because YouTube demonetizes for curses. Why would Joe Biden, the vice president of the United States, give two figs on corruption in Ukraine? He doesn't care about corruption in the United States. He's part of the corruption. And this is coming from somebody who wants Donald Trump to lose. But let's keep it real. Joe Biden is part of the United Corporations of America. We live in the United Corporations of America. Joe Biden is a servant to Wall Street, the fossil fuel industry, big pharma, big real estate. Why would Joe Biden care about a corrupt prosecutor in Ukraine? That's the first red flag that corporate media never even asked. But most importantly, and I assume Glenn and the story that the Intercept wouldn't publish, which he says is going to be published, he's going to self-publish it soon, ask this question, I assume, because it's a basic question, why Joe Biden's campaign never definitively came out and said, I never met, or Joe Biden never met with this Ukrainian Burisma executive. All they said was your classic Washington non-denial denial. Well, we don't have a meeting on the schedule. Yeah, well, usually the mafia doesn't put it into their Microsoft Outlook calendar. We're meeting to talk about the next hit. Usually people who money launder or do shady things don't put it in the calendar. So, and smash that like button. We got 1,000 people watching. 400 people have pressed the like button. I need another 600. Please press the thumbs up button. So, Joe Biden's campaign has not challenged that Joe Biden met with this Ukrainian, with this Burisma executive. Joe Biden's campaign also did not challenge the authenticity of the emails. So, and I already see people in the comments, Jesus, what about the lesser of two evils do you not understand? Newsflash, and I've told my viewers this. I have personally, and a lot of viewers don't like it, I personally voted for Joe Biden, even though he's corrupt, even though he's a warmonger. That is my personal decision. But I'm a journalist. Actual journalists, which I consider Glenn Greenwald to be one of the finest, don't just get to turn off journalism and investigation based on the calendar. You don't turn off journalism and investigation because it's 2 or 3 weeks before an election. You don't have different standards or different measurements for a story critical or damning of Joe Biden, but very, very happily, very, very recklessly run equally more dubious stories on Russiagate, on the Russian collusion, the same outlets that censored this Hunter Biden story that does have some smoke to it, that does not smell right. We're pushing, we're elevating all these Russiagate stories like Russian bounties on U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, that Russia put bounties on U.S. soldiers' heads based on one anonymous source. How many Russia stories about Trump collusion with Russia, which I've said since I was at the Young Turks 4 years ago, sounded like a Cold War espionage thriller. It was not based in facts. Frankly, we still have no firm evidence that Russia even hacked the DNC. The DNC didn't even allow the FBI to investigate its servers. The CEO of CrowdStrike, which was the third party cybersecurity firm that the DNC hired to confirm that Russia hacked the DNC, as Aaron Mate of the Gray Zone reported. The CEO of CrowdStrike in 2017 went in front of Congress in private testimonial and said, we don't have conclusive evidence that the data was exfiltrated by Russia. So why I'm explaining this and why it's important in terms of Glenn resigning, there's legitimate questions that the corporate media has refused to answer. There's legitimate questions that the corporate media has refused to ask or investigate because now it's 5 days, but when this story came out, it was 2 weeks before, because it was 2 weeks to the election, and frankly, they don't want to harm Biden. And they feel that they need to, quote, course correct, that they need to, quote, course correct the sins of 2016, where they covered Hillary's emails too much, or that they reported on the Podesta leaks that showed corruption on Hillary Clinton. But the truth is, just ask, and no corporate media executive, and no corporate media reporter, and no corporate media critic like Brian Stelter, Mr. Reliable Sources, has asked this question to Joe Biden. Frankly, I don't know why Donald Trump, again, I want Donald Trump to lose. I personally voted for Biden, and a lot of people have slammed me for it. But I have to sleep at night. That's my personal choice. You vote for whoever you want. But unlike other independent outlets, my personal choice to vote for Biden does not cloud my journalism. I have to be consistent. I have to tell the truth. I have to investigate consistently. I can't shut it off a couple weeks before the election and pretend there's no there here. By the way, if the Biden story is true, which I think there's reason to think he actually met with this Ukrainian Burisma executive, and then a year later pressured a Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Burisma, who his son was making $50,000 a month to do nothing. He had no expertise in natural gas. I think there is legitimacy to this story. Does that mean Biden is worse than Trump? That's not what this is about. No. And it's not breaking news, by the way, that Joe Biden is corrupt. That's not what this is about. This is about selective censorship. You cannot, if you are a journalist, you cannot, if you believe in the truth coming out, say, well, this story is right before the election. It might harm Biden, so we're going to be careful with it. If we're Facebook, we're going to hide it. We're not even going to show it on Facebook. If you're Twitter, we're literally going to block people from sharing it. We're going to block the New York Post account. Selective censorship is dangerous. Right now, some might be happy with the censorship because they want Trump out so bad, they don't care and they're losing their minds. But wait till that censorship comes back to bite you in the ass. Excuse my French, demonetized. Swear jar, super chats. The censorship that you support now will come back to bite you later, and we'll get into that later. So with that setup, with that explanation that the New York Post reported, emails show Joe Biden met with an executive of Burisma, the oil company in Ukraine that his son was on the board for, that his son was making $50,000 a year for. And after he met with that executive, a year later, he injected himself into Ukrainian politics and forced a Ukrainian prosecutor who was looking into Burisma to be fired. That's a legitimate story. Joe Biden should have to answer, yes or no, did you meet with this executive? I don't know why no journalist has asked him. I don't know why Trump didn't press him on it during the debate, because the moderator wasn't going to. Are the emails real? Because let me tell you something. If I was accused of meeting with some executive from an oil company in a foreign country and then interjecting myself to get a prosecutor fired who was investigating that oil company, and oh, by the way, my son is on the board of that oil company, guess what? If I never met with him, I would come out and say, that is a lie. I never met with this person. Prove that I met with this person. You can't prove it because I never met with him. I wouldn't just say, well, I wouldn't have my campaign just say, well, it wasn't on the calendar. We don't have it on the calendar that he met with him. No. If he didn't meet with him, Biden would come out and say he didn't meet with him. And I don't want to hear these neoliberal resistance people say, well, Jordan, he didn't say anything because he's not going to legitimize it by commenting. Give me a break. Do you have your head so far up your ass that you think that's why they didn't firmly deny it? It is a non-denial when you say, well, we don't have it, we don't have it in the calendar. And they didn't challenge the email's authenticity. And then later, text messages came out, which the Biden campaign also didn't challenge, that suggest Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's dealings with Burisma. Now, to be clear, I want to be fair, there is no direct evidence that Joe Biden has made a penny off of Hunter Biden's dealings in China or Ukraine. So that is important. There's no evidence of that. Maybe evidence exists, but as of now, there's no evidence. But there is questions that need to be answered on whether Joe Biden, as Vice President of the United States, was having apparently off the books, off the calendar meetings with an executive of his son Hunter Biden's company, the company that his son Hunter Biden sat on the board of. And if he then met with then a year later got this prosecutor fired, which again, no journalist has even bothered to ask, why was Joe Biden so interested? Why would the Obama administration be so interested in a corrupt prosecutor in Ukraine? Come on. So all of this comes, hey, my mother's in the super chat, be nice. All of this shadows Glenn Greenwald, a Pulitzer Prize winner, the co-founder of The Intercept. According to him, and I have no reason not to believe it, that he was attempting to write a piece for The Intercept. Part of his contract with The Intercept was editorial freedom, not to be censored. His contract did allow editors to review his pieces, did allow editors to have some say in his pieces, but very limited say. That, according to Glenn, and again, I don't have any reason not to believe Glenn Greenwald, that, according to Glenn, The Intercept not only refused to publish his piece questioning, reporting on the inconsistencies, and Glenn says the piece will be out soon on Substack. He's now writing on Substack after he resigned. He's saying not only did The Intercept refuse to publish it, because according to Glenn, they wanted him to take out any criticism of Joe Biden, but according to Glenn, they refused to let him publish it elsewhere, which according to his contract, he should have been allowed to do. Now, I just want full disclosure, because I'm an honest person and I'm an honest journalist. Full disclosure. I have spoken to The Intercept in the past and I have reached out to The Intercept in the past about trying to publish particularly investigations I've done on the Flint water crisis and the cover-up. I had reached out to The Intercept. Jen and I broke a story a few months ago on former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder's direct involvement in the criminal cover-up of the Flint water crisis, which led to deaths. 6.5 years later, people are still without clean drinking water in Flint. The media doesn't cover it. The corporate media doesn't cover it. Frankly, the independent media doesn't cover it. I think it's a disaster. I think it's an injustice. I think it's a disgrace that in the United States of America, a community is without clean water for 6.5 years and the media doesn't care. But putting that aside, full disclosure, I have spoken to The Intercept. I have pitched The Intercept. I'm right, I think earlier today, before this came out, I pitched The Intercept on, I'm doing some follow-up reporting. So I'm not, I haven't read the story that's been censored. I have no reason to believe that Glenn Greenwald is lying. Of course, the truth, you got one side, another side, and sometimes it lies, a lot of times it lies somewhere in the middle. But I don't have a reason to not believe Glenn when he's saying they refused to publish it if I didn't water it down and take out the criticism of Joe Biden. And then they wouldn't let me publish it elsewhere. Both of those things are problematic, but the latter is more damning, if you ask me, about the Intercept. Okay, if you feel that there is something wrong with Glenn's piece, if you don't want to touch it because you're not as independent as we thought you were, if you don't want to touch it because, I don't know the inner workings of what happened. We don't know. I would want to hear the Intercept's account of why they didn't publish this piece. I want to be fair to the Intercept, but all we have right now is Glenn Greenwald, who won a Pulitzer, and I have no reason to doubt is telling the truth, that they wouldn't publish it unless that the parts that were very critical or questioning Joe Biden were taken out. But the fact that they wouldn't let it publish it elsewhere is pretty damning, because to me, that would suggest you don't want this out there 5 days before the election. To me, that would suggest that the editors in New York, for whatever reason, whatever their political leanings are, I'm not shaming them if they're choosing to vote for Biden. Again, I have personally chosen to vote for Biden, but that does not affect my journalism. I'm able to do two things at once. Personally feel I have to vote for Biden because I personally think Trump is a psychopath. I'd rather fight Biden and Neera Tanden. I'd rather fight Biden and Wall Street than fight Trump and the Proud Boys, Trump and QAnon. That's my personal decision. And you vote however you want. I'm not about voter shaming. I think there's too much voter shaming. With that said, why would the Intercept not let him publish it elsewhere? To me, that shows ideologically they did not want any damage done to Biden. So let me read further of Glenn's piece. And if you're coming to this late, please press the like button. We got 1,200, almost 1,300 viewers, 718 of you have liked. So let's like more likes. Subscribe to this channel if you're new. We're in the field. We report in the field. We've been on the ground in Philadelphia the last few nights covering the protest over another black man murdered by police. We've been in Flint many times. I've covered Trump rallies the last few weeks. Jen, my co-founder, was just in Portland covering the Proud Boys extravaganza. We cover stories in the field, in the trenches, that very few others do. So please, subscribe to this channel. If you can, leave a super chat. We appreciate it. I want to read a little bit more of Glenn's piece. But the pathologies, illiberalism, and repressive mentality that led to the bizarre spectacle of my being censored by my own media outlet are ones that are by no means unique to The Intercept. These are the viruses that have contaminated virtually every mainstream center-left political organization, academic institution, and newsroom. I began writing about politics 15 years ago with the goal of combating media propaganda and repression, and, regardless of the risks involved, simply cannot accept any situation, no matter how secure or lucrative. And to be clear, I mean, all you got to do is research it. He was making $500,000 at The Intercept, so it was lucrative what he just resigned from. No matter how secure or lucrative, that forces me to submit my journalism and right of free expression to its suffocating constraints and dogmatic dictates. From the time I began writing about politics in 2005, journalistic freedom and editorial independence have been sacrosanct to me. 15 years ago, I created a blog on the free Blogspot software when I was still working as a lawyer, not with any hopes or plans of starting a new career as a journalist, but as a citizen concerned about what I was seeing with the war on terror and civil liberties, and wanting to express what I believed needed to be heard. It was a labor of love based in an ethos of cause and conviction, dependent upon a guarantee of complete editorial freedom. It thrived because the readership I built knew that. Even when they disagreed with particular views I was expressing, I was a free and independent voice, unwedded to any faction, controlled by nobody, endeavoring to be as honest as possible about what I was seeing, and always curious about the wisdom of seeing things differently. The title I chose for that blog, quote, Unclaimed Territory, reflected that spirit of liberation from captivity to any fixed political or intellectual dogma or institutional constraints. When Salon offered me a job as a columnist in 2007, and then again when The Guardian did the same in 2012, I accepted their offers on the condition that I would have the right, except in narrowly defined situations, such as articles that could create legal liability for the news outlet, to publish my articles and columns directly to the internet without censorship, advanced editorial interference, or any other intervention permitted or approval needed. Both outlets revamped their publication system to accommodate this condition, and over the many years I worked with them, they always honored those commitments. When I left The Guardian at the height of the Snowden reporting in 2013, in order to create a new media outlet, I did not do so, needless to say, in order to impose upon myself more constraints and restrictions on my journalistic independence. The exact opposite was true. The intended core innovation of The Intercept, above all else, was to create a new media outlet where all talented, responsible journalists would enjoy the same right of editorial freedom I had always insisted upon for myself. As I told former New York Times editor Bill Keller in a 2013 exchange we had in the Times about my critiques of mainstream journalism and the idea behind The Intercept, quote, editors should be there to empower and enable strong, highly factual, aggressive, adversarial journalism, not to serve as roadblocks to neuter or suppress the journalism. When the three of us, himself, Jeremy Scahill, and Laura Poitras, as co-founders, made the decision early on that we would not attempt to manage the day-to-day operations of the new outlet so that we could instead focus on our journalism, we negotiated the right of approval for senior editors and especially the editor-in-chief. The central responsibility of the person holding that title was to implement, in close consultation with us, the unique journalistic vision and journalistic values on which we founded this new outlet. Chief among those values was editorial freedom, the protection of journalists' right to speak in an honest voice, and the airing rather than suppression of dissent from mainstream orthodoxies and even collegial disagreements with one another. That would be accomplished, above all else, by ensuring that journalists, once they fulfilled the first duty of factual accuracy in journalistic ethics, would be not just permitted, but encouraged to express political and ideological views that deviated from mainstream orthodoxy and those of their own editors, to express themselves in their own voice of passion and conviction rather than stuffed in the corporatized, contrived tone of artificial objectivity, above it all omnipotence, and to be completely free of anyone else's dogmatic beliefs or ideological agenda, including those of the three co-founders. So this is where he gets a little bit more into what he is claiming is The Intercept not living by its founding principles. The current iteration of The Intercept is completely unrecognizable when compared to the original vision. Rather than offering a venue for airing dissent, marginalized voices, and unheard perspectives, it is rapidly becoming just another media outlet which mandated ideological and partisan loyalties, a rigid and narrow range of permitted viewpoints, ranging from establishment liberalism to soft leftism, but always anchored in ultimate support for the Democratic Party, a deep fear of offending hegemonic cultural liberalism and center-left Twitter luminaries, and an overarching need to secure the approval and admiration of the very mainstream media outlets we created The Intercept to oppose, critique, and subvert. As a result, it is a rare event indeed when a radical freelance voice, unwelcome in mainstream precincts, is published in The Intercept. Outside reporters or writers with no claim to mainstream acceptability, exactly the people we set out to amplify, have almost no chance of being published. It is even rare for The Intercept to publish content that would not fit very comfortably in at least a dozen or more center-left publications of similar size which predated its founding, from Mother Jones to Vox and even MSNBC. Courage is required to step out of line, to question and poke at those pieties most sacred in one's own milieu, but fear of alienating the guardians of liberal orthodoxy, especially on Twitter, is the predominant attribute of The Intercept's New York-based editorial leadership team. As a result, The Intercept has all but abandoned its core mission of challenging and poking at, rather than appeasing and comforting, the institutions and guardians most powerful in its cultural and political circles. Making all of this worse, The Intercept, while gradually excluding the co-founders from any role in its editorial mission or direction, and making one choice after the next to which I vocally objected as a betrayal of our core mission, continued publicly to trade on my name in order to raise funds for journalism it knew I did not support. It purposely allowed the perception to fester that I was the person responsible for its journalistic mistakes in order to ensure that blame for those mistakes was heaped on me rather than the editors who were consolidating control and were responsible for them. He's about to get into the Reality Winner debacle. The most egregious, but by no means only, example of exploiting my name to evade responsibility was the Reality Winner debacle. As the New York Times recently reported, that was a story in which I had no involvement whatsoever. While based in Brazil, I was never asked to work on the documents which Winner sent to our New York newsroom, with no request that any specific journalist work on them. I did not even learn of the existence of that document until very shortly prior to its publication. The person who oversaw, edited, and controlled that story was Betsy Reed, which was how it should be given the magnitude and complexity of that reporting and her position as the Intercept's editor-in-chief. It was the Intercept's editors who pressured the story's reporters to quickly send those documents for authentication to the government, because they were eager to prove to mainstream media outlets and prominent liberals that the Intercept was willing to get on board the Russiagate train. They wanted to counteract the perception created by my articles expressing skepticism about the central claims of that scandal, that the Intercept had stepped out of line on a story of high importance to U.S. liberalism and even the left. The craving to secure the approval of the very mainstream media outlets we set out to counteract was the root cause for the speed and recklessness with which that document from Winner was handled. But the Intercept to this very day has refused to provide any public accounting of what happened in the Reality Winner story, as to explain who the editors were who made mistakes and why any of it happened. As the New York Times article makes clear, that refusal persists to this very day, notwithstanding vocal demands from myself, Jeremy Scahill, and Laura Poitras, and others that the Intercept, as an institution that demands transparency from others, has the obligation to provide it for itself. The reason for this silence and this cover-up is obvious. Accounting to the public about what happened with the Reality Winner story would reveal who the actual editors are who are responsible for that deeply embarrassing newsroom failure. And that would negate their ability to continue to hide behind me and let the public continue to assume that I was the person at fault for a reporting process from which I was completely excluded from the start. This is just one example illustrating the frustrating dilemma of having a newsroom exploit my name, work, and credibility when it was convenient to do so, while increasingly denying me any opportunity to influence its journalistic mission and editorial direction, all while pursuing an editorial mission completely anathema to what I believe. So let me just take a quick pause, because I think there's something important to point out here. So Glenn literally won a Pulitzer Prize for The Guardian on Edward Snowden's NSA documents. He even off of winning a Pulitzer Prize, which I assume, I'm sure his salary went up at The Guardian. Glenn left The Guardian to start The Intercept because, I don't want to speak for him, I assume he felt that creating his own outlet with Jeremy Scahill, with Laura Poitras, would present even more editorial freedom, even more freedom from censorship and corporate restraints. Because as somebody who has worked for the corporate media and in independent media, I could tell you, even at independent media, I worked at the Young Turks, there are corporate restraints on your journalism. This isn't about me and the Young Turks. I'm not going to get into it, but there were restraints on what I could do. Restraints that I felt were put on me for corporate concerns, for over concerns that TYT and specifically Cenk had at ruffling feathers with mainstream outlets. To be clear, that happened while I was at the Young Turks. So imagine what somebody like Glenn Greenwald, who was a much higher figure than I ever was, had to deal with at The Guardian and at The Intercept. And what Glenn is describing is making a sound journalistic decision. The journalistic decision, no, I don't want to run the day-to-day of a news outlet, which will have, I don't know how many staff The Intercept has, but you have to imagine at least a couple dozen, and have to oversee reporters, oversee editors, deal with the bureaucracy. It's very hard to do that and do your own journalism. I mean, Status Coup is myself, my co-founder, Jen Dies. We have part-timer, Colin Tooley, and we use freelancers. Even myself having to oversee a lot of those and be day-to-day communication with Colin. Not that I don't like these folks. It's a lot of work to manage other people. I don't manage Jen, but Colin, freelancers we've had, when we've had freelance reporters, a lot of it has fallen on me. It's a lot of work to do that and do journalism. So Glenn made the sound journalistic decision to, no, I don't want to do that. We'll have an editor-in-chief. They will have control. I will give them ultimate approval of my articles, but with the basic understanding that, I want a Pulitzer Prize. I founded this article. If there is going to be any challenges of my work, there better be a damn good reason. Now we know that it's not just because he won a Pulitzer, but Glenn's work has never been challenged on factual grounds. The elites have challenged him because he does not fit into their orthodoxy, but his work has not been challenged on factual grounds. So the fact that, according to Glenn, he was writing a piece that he wanted to go out this week about censorship of the Hunter Joe Biden story. I haven't read the piece yet because he says he's going to publish it, but he wanted to, I assume he was pointing out what I'm pointing out, and I've been pointing out. The New York Post reported that Joe Biden met with an executive from Burisma, the oil company, that his son, Hunter Biden, was making $50,000 a month to do nothing on the board, literally playing off the Biden's name. The New York Post reported that Joe Biden met with this guy, and then a year later, when Burisma was being investigated by a Ukrainian prosecutor, used his position as vice president of the USA to get this Ukrainian prosecutor fired. I assume Glenn will point out in the piece that was censored by The Intercept, Joe Biden has not denied that he met with this Ukrainian prosecutor. Joe Biden and his campaign have not even challenged the authenticity of the emails. Again, there's nuance, right? Of course, the fact that Rudy Giuliani was shopping around this story is suspect. Of course, the fact that Steve Bannon was involved with shopping around this story is suspect. Hunter Biden's partner, his business partner, Tony Bobulinski, I might be mispronouncing that last name. There's some things with him, if you look into him. He might be a little suspect and have some ill will against the Bidens because the Bidens promised him, certain roles or financial gain that they never followed through. So I'm not saying believe this story hook, line, and sinker. No. But this story, there has been story after story after story after story on Russiagate that was not censored by Facebook, was not censored by Twitter, where Twitter literally blocked people from sharing this story. No. It was elevated by Facebook. It was elevated by Twitter. It went in their trending topics. It was then taken from Twitter and Facebook and ran like wildfire all over CNN, MSNBC. Rachel Maddow having her deranged monologues every night about the Russian boogeyman. Most of these stories, which I've been saying for years here at Status Coup, were more dubious, were more suspicious than the New York Post Hunter Biden story. But these same outlets and these same Silicon Valley platforms censored the Hunter Biden story while pushing and elevating those stories. Why? Because those stories could hurt President Trump. And this is coming from someone that wants Trump gone. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. I think he's a dangerous person. I think he's a psychopath. I think 4 more years of him, forget the progressive movement. We have to be asking, will there be any country left? And I'm not a dramatic person, so when I say that, I mean it. I think he's deranged. I think he's a psychopath. He's taken joyrides around Walter Reed while contagious with a deadly virus. He takes off his mask and walks into the White House with a deadly virus. He's openly telling white supremacists to monitor the elections. Sure, Biden's corrupt. Sure, Biden's a warmonger. You vote for whoever you want. I'm not voting for Joe Biden as much as I'm voting against Donald Trump. But that is totally irrelevant to, did Joe Biden meet with an executive from Burisma? And a year later, did Joe Biden, after meeting with that executive from Burisma, get a Ukrainian prosecutor fired who was investigating Burisma, who his son was making $50,000 a month for? That's it. That's the important questions that the media hasn't asked Joe Biden and the media has covered up. So I'd like to know from The Intercept, what was in this article that you found so objectionable that you wouldn't let? We're not talking about like an intern at The Intercept. We're not talking about a Cub Scout new reporter at The Intercept. We're not talking about some inexperienced reporter that needs some seasoning here. We're talking about the co-founder of The Intercept. We're talking about Pulitzer Prize winning Glenn Greenwald. You don't have to love him, but he's not, his skills as a journalist have not been challenged or shouldn't be challenged. Without him, we would not know a lot of the details about NSA surveillance on U.S. citizens. Thank you, Robbie. $49.99. Thank you for your honest analysis. Thank you, Gordon. $3 in the super chat. Thank you. Let me see if I missed any others. We do have a GoFundMe going, so we really appreciate it. The GoFundMe is going towards our in-the-field reporting. We will be in Pennsylvania on the ground for Election Day, Jen and I, which I think Pennsylvania is going to be the key state that decides whether Trump wins re-election or Biden wins. I think it will come down to Pennsylvania. That's why we're going there. We'll be there on the ground instead of just sitting in our studio like the rest of the media folk. So definitely leave a super chat. Sign up as a Status Coup member if you can. That's how we grow for the long term. StatusCout.com/join. I promise you, joining us for as low as $5 a month, it is going to what we're saying it's going to. In the field reporting. I just put the link in the super chat. But the key here is what, and again, I want to be fair. I'd like to know what the Intercept's, why the Intercept censored this story and wouldn't allow Glenn to even publish it elsewhere. But the point is there not legitimate questions that should be asked to the vice president, the former vice president, if he met with this Burisma executive and then less than a year later tried to get this prosecutor fired? It doesn't matter whether, lesser of two evils, how it affects the election. You don't do journalism based on calendars. You don't pull back the truth. You don't restrain investigation because there's an election in 2 weeks, but push every suspect Russiagate story without the same standards. And by the way, I'm not saying that outlets shouldn't have been equally looked at this Hunter Biden story with suspicion. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have challenged it. What I am saying, it shouldn't have been censored. It should have been published and been allowed to be shared on social media. Reporters should have been allowed to ask about it. And this censorship, by the way, of this Hunter Biden story is not an isolated thing. I mean, literally, let me find it. You have YouTube every day. I'm biting the hand that feeds me. YouTube every day. For those of you new to this channel that are watching for the first time, you probably have never even seen us because YouTube openly is suppressing independent channels. Finally, this is YouTube's blog. Finally, we'll continue to, quote, elevate authoritative sources, including, get this, CNN and Fox News, for election-related news and information queries in search results and watch next. In English, what that means, and this isn't just for the election, they've been doing this for 2 years, outlets like YouTube are hiding independent channels like this without corporate funding that aren't mainstream media outlets, and they're stuffing people's feeds with CNN, MSNBC, with Fox News. That's authoritative. Twitter literally just suspended I think, director of border security. Let me find that. Twitter suspends Customs and Border Protection Chief for praising the border wall with Mexico, calls it hateful conduct. Coming from somebody who is against the border wall with Mexico, which does think it is totally unnecessary, which does think it is racist, this is not something that the head of Customs and Border Protection should be suspended for. He literally wrote, Customs and Border Protection and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers continues to build the new wall. Hold on. Continues to build the new wall every day. Every mile helps us stop gang members, murderers, sexual predators, and drugs from entering our country. It's a fact. Walls work. Okay, I disagree vehemently with that statement. But under the American Constitution, if we still live in a country where the Constitution applies, you have a First Amendment, even to hateful speech. That statement, although I disagree with it, who is Twitter to be censoring those kind of statements? Who is Facebook or YouTube? Sure, you could say, well, Jordan, they're private companies. They could do whatever they want. No. If these companies are protected from the government to have liability if people spread disinformation on those platforms. Because right now, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, they are shielded from liability when people push defamation. Trust me, I know, because I was defamed 3 years ago. There was an allegation made against me, which was a lie, and I was defamed, but the outlet that pushed it, I could not sue because they were shielded. So if they are allowed to be shielded for defamation, if they are allowed to be shielded for if somebody commits violent acts and says before they commit those violent acts on Twitter, Facebook, or elsewhere, I'm going to do this, and Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube do nothing about it, then they should not. Then they should be regulated as a public utility. End of story. They should not be private companies because we cannot allow three men, Jack Dorsey of Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, I forget the Google CEO's name, Google owns YouTube, to be, kings of information. It's insane. Now, if people are openly inciting violence, that's a different story. I tend to have different views than some progressives on, say, Alex Jones, who I don't think inciting violence is protected by the First Amendment. And I do think outlet platforms have a role to take action against figures like that. But someone writing the wall is stopping gang members, murderers, this and that? Sure, I don't agree. I think it's a racist comment. I think the wall's racist. But he has a right to say it. All of this is connected to why Glenn Greenwald resigned from The Intercept. The Intercept, unless there's something we're missing, unless there's something that will come out of The Intercept and their side of the story that makes us feel differently about this, Glenn Greenwald won a Pulitzer. If he wants to write a piece questioning the media's censorship of the Joe Biden, Hunter Biden story, because the key is this isn't just a story about Hunter Biden. This is a story about Joe Biden, too, who's running for president. This is a story about, did Joe Biden use his perch as Vice President of the United States to help his son? Did Joe Biden use his role as Vice President of the United States to meet with executives of his son Hunter Biden's company that Hunter Biden was making $50,000 a year for, and then inject himself to make sure investigations into that company were killed by getting rid of the prosecutor investigating? Those are legitimate questions that CNN has not asked, that MSNBC won't ask, that the New York Times is not asking, that the Washington Post is not asking, that the Associated Press is not asking, Daily Beast, BuzzFeed, and now it seems The Intercept. I would need to know a damn good reason why The Intercept wouldn't let Glenn Greenwald write this piece there and wouldn't let him publish it elsewhere. And by the way, you can be a partisan person. You can be a partisan person that says, Jordan, I'm with you on censorship, but I want Trump out, so I don't care. I'm suspending my critique on censorship because I want Trump out, and right now, I don't want anything to hurt Biden. There's a lot of people that feel that way. There's a lot of progressives that feel that way. I'm telling you, that kind of thinking is dangerous, and I'll tell you why. As much as I agree we need to get rid of Donald Trump, and everybody could agree or disagree. Everybody can agree, can say, some people could say, well, I'm done voting lesser of two evils. Trump is a symptom. Biden is just as bad as Trump, whatever. We could disagree on those things. That's fine. I'm not shaming you if you don't vote for Joe Biden. I made the personal choice too. Your choice is your choice. I'm not telling you what to do. With that said, why it is not okay or healthy, and I think Glenn Greenwald is making this point, for actual journalistic outlets, and there's very few of them left, to selectively censor, is because if you allow the selective censorship of the Joe Biden, Hunter Biden story, and by the way, it might come out, Joe Biden did not meet with this guy. It might come out that the emails are fake. But those things have not come out yet. And again, if Biden didn't meet with this executive before getting involved to kill the investigation into his son Hunter Biden's oil company that his son was in, you would think he would come out and say, I never met with this man from Burisma. Period. Not his campaign feebly saying, oh no, we don't see it on the calendar. Yeah, the mafia doesn't put on the calendar when they're talking about who they're going to hit next. Money launderers don't write or put on the calendar where they're laundering money or how. But why it's dangerous to cheer for selective censorship that will help Biden and hurt Trump, if we set the precedent now that Twitter, that Facebook, that YouTube, that the New York can basically censor whoever they want, and that supposed news outlets like CNN, MSNBC, digital outlets could then jump on bandwagon with false righteousness that, no, we're not putting this quote. They're even calling it Russian disinformation with zero evidence. If you set the precedence that they could do this, let's fast forward to the year 2024, shall we? It's 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus. President Kamala Harris, because let's be real, not a definite, Biden, if he becomes president, makes it to another term. Not just in health, but he might not run for another term. So let's say, for argument's sake, 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus, President Kamala Harris, right? President Kamala Harris is down in the polls to progressive challenger, I don't know, let's just say Nina Turner, okay? A story comes out 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus. Nina Turner's leading in all the polls. She's leading in New Hampshire, leading in many states. That shows that Kamala Harris, as president, might have illegally, or let's not say illegally, but unethically enriched her family in her role as president. That might have taken actions as president, not for the benefit of the United States, but for the benefit of her own personal enrichment. Okay? You don't think that this is going to repeat itself? You don't think that they're going to stop that story from coming out, claiming Russian disinformation? By the way, the shoe's on the other foot. Do you think in that same scenario, 2 weeks before the Iowa caucus, if Nina Turner were leading and establishment Democrats, her opponents, drop some opposition research claiming that, I don't know, Nina Turner did something shady? You think Twitter would block it? Think Facebook would suppress it? You think the corporate media wouldn't cover it? Hell no! They'd be running like wildfire with it because it's called selective censorship for a reason, folks. And it's not just the fact that they would run with it. The corporate media is part of the system of the United Corporations of America. We don't live in a country. We live in the United Corporations of America. And the corporate media is a cog on that machine. They are one and the same with the banks, with the lobbyists, with the corporations. And it is a revolving door. Do you know some of Facebook's top communications people and some of Facebook's top executives that decided to basically bury this Hunter Biden, Joe Biden story used to work for the Democratic Campaign Committee, used to work for Senator Barbara Boxer, used to work in high Democratic positions? Do you know that one of the top communications persons for Twitter used to work with Kamala Harris? Do you think those things don't matter, folks? Do you know that somebody on Facebook's election security and election integrity team used to work as an advisor to Joe Biden? I'm not talking as a right-wing conspiracist. These are facts. People are human beings. Do you think that those people don't have biases dictating the decisions they make on who and how to censor? Come on, folks. Let me read more of Glenn Greenwald's piece. And by the way, keep pressing the like button, and please subscribe to this channel if you're new. If you don't know about us, we do in-the-field reporting all over the country that the corporate media does not do. I've been personally to 40 states in the last 4 years. We do this through you, the viewers. We have small dollar memberships, statuscoup.com/join, $5 a month. You could support our in-the-field reporting. You also get access to our members-only Discord, as well as a once-a-month members call through Zoom and other behind-the-scenes videos. And speaking of in-the-field reporting, my co-founder Jen and I will be on the ground in Pennsylvania covering that critical state on Election Day. So we will be in the field while most others will be sitting in studios pontificating. We'll be in the trenches, reporting on election fuckery, on any ballot fuckery, any fuckery, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats doing it, we'll report on it. More from Glenn Greenwald. Despite all of this, I did not want to leave The Intercept. As it deteriorated and abandoned its original mission, I reasoned to myself, perhaps rationalized, that as long as The Intercept at least continued to provide me the resources to personally do the journalism I believe in and never to interfere in or impede my editorial freedom, I could swallow everything else. But the brute censorship this week of my article about the Hunter Biden materials and Joe Biden's conduct regarding Ukraine and China, as well as my critique of the media's rank-closing attempt in a deeply unholy union with Silicon Valley and the intelligence community to suppress its revelations, eroded the last justification I could cite for staying. It means that not only does this media outlet not provide the editorial freedom to other journalists, as I had so hopefully envisioned 7 years ago, but now no longer even provides it to me. In the days heading into a presidential election, I am somehow silenced from expressing any views that random editors in New York find disagreeable, and now somehow have to conform my writing and reporting to cater to their partisan desires and eagerness to elect specific candidates. To say that such censorship is a red line for me, a situation I would never accept no matter the cost, is an understatement. It is astonishing to me, but also a reflection of our current discourse and illiberal media environment that I have been silenced about Joe Biden by my own media outlet. Numerous other episodes were also contributing causes to my decision to leave: the Reality Winner cover-up, the decision to hang Lee Fang out to dry, and even force him to apologize when a colleague tried to destroy his reputation by publicly, baselessly, and repeatedly branding him as a racist. Its refusal to report on the daily proceedings of the Assange extradition hearing because the freelance reporter doing an outstanding job was politically distasteful. Its utter lack of editorial standards when it comes to viewpoints or reporting that flatter the beliefs of its liberal base. The Intercept published some of the most credulous and false affirmations of maximalist Russiagate madness, and horrifyingly took the lead in falsely branding the Hunter Biden archive as Russian disinformation by mindlessly and uncritically citing, of all things, a letter by former CIA officials that contained this baseless insinuation. I know it sounds banal to say, but even with all these frustrations and failures, I am leaving and writing this with genuine sadness, not fury. That news outlet is something I and numerous close friends and colleagues poured an enormous amount of our time, energy, passion, and love into building. The Intercept has done great work. Its editorial leaders and first look managers steadfastly supported the difficult and dangerous reporting I did last year with my brave young colleagues at the Intercept Brazil to expose corruption at the highest levels of the Bolsonaro government, and stood behind us as we endured threats of death and imprisonment. continues to employ some of my closest friends, outstanding journalists whose work, when it overcomes editorial resistance, produces nothing but the highest admiration from me. Jeremy Scahill, Lee Fang, Murtaz Hussain, Naomi Klein, Ryan Grimm, and others. And I have no personal animus for anyone there, nor any desire to hurt it as an institution. Betsy Reed is an exceptionally smart editor and a very good human being with whom I've developed a close and valuable friendship. And Pierre Omidyar, the original funder and publisher of First Look, always honored his personal commitment never to interfere in our editorial process, even when I was publishing articles directly at odds with his strongly held views, and even when I was attacking other institutions he was funding. I'm not leaving out of vengeance or personal conflict, but out of conviction and cause. And none of the critiques I have voiced about The Intercept are unique to it. To the contrary, there are the raging battles over free expression and the right of dissent raging within every major cultural, political, and journalistic institution. That's the crisis that journalism, and more broadly values of liberalism, faces. Our discourse is becoming increasingly intolerant of dissenting views, and our culture is demanding more and more submission to prevailing orthodoxies imposed by self-anointed monopolists of truth and righteousness, backed up by armies of online enforcement mobs. And nothing is crippled by that trend more severely than journalism, which, above all else, requires the ability of journalists to offend and anger power centers, question or reject sacred pieties, unearth facts that reflect negatively especially on the most beloved and powerful figures, and highlight corruption no matter where it is found and regardless of who is benefited or injured by its exposure. Prior to the extraordinary experience of being censored this week by my own news outlet, I had already been exploring the possibility of creating a new media outlet. I have spent a couple of months in active discussion with some of the most interesting, independent, and vibrant journalists, writers, and commentators across the political spectrum about the feasibility of securing finance for a new outlet that would be designed to combat these trends. The first two paragraphs of our working document reads as follows. American media is gripped in a polarized culture war that is forcing journalism to conform to tribal groupthink narratives that are often divorced from the truth and cater to perspectives that are not reflective of the broader public, but instead a minority of hyper-partisan elites. The need to conform to highly restrictive, artificial cultural narratives and partisan identities has created a repressive and illiberal environment in which vast swaths of news and reporting either do not happen or are presented through the most skewed and reality-detached lenses. With nearly all major media institutions captured to some degree by this dynamic, a deep need exists for media that is untethered and free to transgress the boundaries of this polarized culture war and address a demand from a public that is starved for media that doesn't play for a side but instead pursues lines of reporting, thought, and inquiry wherever they lead, without fear of violating cultural pieties or elite orthodoxies. I have definitely not relinquished hope that this ambitious project can be accomplished, and I theoretically could have stayed at The Intercept until then, guaranteeing a stable and secure income for my family by swallowing the dictates of my new censors. But I would be deeply ashamed if I did that, and believe that I would be betraying my own principles and convictions that I urge others to follow. So in the meantime, I've decided to follow in the footsteps of numerous other writers and journalists who have been expelled from increasingly repressive journalistic precincts for various forms of hearsay and dissent, and who have sought refuge here. I hope to exploit the freedom this new platform offers not only to continue to publish the independent and hard-hitting investigative journalism and candid analysis and opinion writing that my readers have come to expect, but also to develop the podcast and continue the YouTube program System Update I launched earlier this year in partnership with The Intercept. To do that, to make this viable, I will need your support. People who are able to subscribe and sign up for the newsletter attached to this platform will enable my work to thrive and still be heard, perhaps even more so than before. I began my journalism career by depending on readers' willingness to support independent journalism, which they believe is necessary to sustain. It is somewhat daunting at this point in my life, but also very exciting to return to that model where one answers only to the public a journalist should be serving. And he puts his letter of resignation at the bottom. So I will drop this in the super chat if you want to read it. So I have a couple thoughts, and I'm going to share, I guess, some behind-the-scenes things and keep those super chats coming. Please, if you can, donate to our GoFundMe. For those of you that don't know, in November 2017, I was let go from the Young Turks. I've talked about that many, many times, so I'm not going to get back into that. But I think 2 or 3 months before I was let go from the Young Turks, I contacted Glenn Greenwald. For a lot of reasons, I was becoming disenchanted with working at the Young Turks. The freedom that I had in my first year at the Young Turks, where I actually, back then, grew a channel from when I started 2,000 subscribers to 140,000 subscribers in a year. And for the first year, I had pretty much autonomy in terms of where I reported, what stories I reported on, all those things. That had dramatically changed in my second year for many different reasons, including them putting a former MSNBC cable news producer as my manager. So I was becoming pretty disenchanted. I felt like I was being restrained at the Young Turks. I even got in an argument with Cenk, who didn't want me to go to Flint again for a particular trip, basically telling me this was at this point a local story and didn't want to keep sending me to Flint because, frankly, according to him, he wanted me to do more reporting and investigating on Trump, which I strongly disagreed with. I felt there was more than enough Trump reporting out there and very, very little coverage of the grave injustice that an American city has been poisoned and left to die. And I was starting to make gains on exposing the cover-up of the Flint water crisis, and they were scaling me back from doing so. I was also having to jump through hoops to get approval for other stories I would want to go out in the field and cover. So with all that said, I contacted Glenn Greenwald, who I had never, I think I spoke to a little bit, but not much. Ruth P, $5. Just subscribe to Glenn Greenwald on Substack. His integrity is loud and clear. I don't want to lose that. # free Julian Assange. I agree. I definitely, if you can, subscribe to Glenn and Status Coup. StatusCoop.com/join. Become a member for $5 a month to fund our in-the-field reporting. Plenty of progressive commentators out there who do commentary from their studios. Nothing wrong with that. We're a little different. We're in the field. We report all over the country. I was just in Queens covering on a low-income public housing building that has been without gas for over a month. Black people. No gas. Can't cook hot meals for over a month. We were just in the field. Jen doing great reporting from the Proud Boys rally, covering the California wildfires. My reporting, I've been to Flint many times. I covered General Motors laying off 15,000 workers last year after getting a $51 billion federal bailout. I've been on the ground before George Floyd's murder. I was in Dallas last year covering the assassination of 26-year-old black man, Botham John, who was murdered while in his apartment by an off-duty police officer who thought she was in her apartment and shot him dead. We've covered the BLM protests on the ground. We were just in Philadelphia 2 nights ago. We showed you, watch the videos, they're all on this channel, police beating protesters. One police officer screaming at a protester, "I don't care about you either." We are in the field. Not to say that, we're any better than others or not, but I think being in the trenches matters because you uncover a lot more of the corruption in the United Corporations of America being out there. But it's wildly expensive, and as you could see from Glenn, we could never do what we're doing here for a corporate outlet. That's why we created Status Coup as an independent outlet, and we haven't taken any shortcuts, and it's hard. I am making, personally, $70,000 less as an individual at 34 years old. I'm making $70,000 less than I made 4 years ago. Okay? We have lost a lot during COVID. We've lost over 300 paying members. I'm not trying, we're not going bankrupt or anything, but we've lost a lot. You're not just signing up as a member here to throw away $5 a month. You're signing up to fund this important journalism. So I hope you'll consider $5 a month, 16 cents a day statuscoup.com/join. But what I was getting at is I contacted Glenn, and we had a conversation. We had 2 conversations, I believe, about me possibly joining the Intercept. He was very clear that he doesn't make the hiring decisions. The editor-in-chief, Betsy Reed, made the hiring decisions. But we had a conversation, and I'm not going to get into full details, but I shared why I wanted to leave the Young Turks. He said some things, and, everything, it was really, I was just blown away speaking with him. I don't think I ever had, other than interviewing him once while at the Young Turks, I never had a off-camera conversation with him. And I was blown away just by his brilliance, but B, he kind of, more so than most people I spoke with, kind of understood the grift. He understood the grift that is corporate media. The fact that these are basically PR people masquerading as journalists. And he was interested in me possibly joining the Intercept. He expressed admiration for my reporting, specifically in the field. He thought it could add to the Intercept, which really didn't do much, like on-camera video reporting. They were mostly article-based, and he felt I could add something by doing that on-camera reporting. They had a much larger budget than the Young Turks had, so I was attracted to that, meaning I could cover more stories for longer, because at TYT I was kind of restrained. I would be out in the field, but they would only want me out there for 4 or 5 days. Well, if you want to investigate corruption, you often need more than 3 or 4 days to build sources, meet with sources, go through records, those kind of things. Actually, it was me who, I regret it, looking back on it, it was me who, after speaking with him and after him expressing interest in maybe, going further, bringing the editor-in-chief into the discussion, after I had expressed to my former boss, Jank, that I was thinking of leaving because I couldn't work for the person that they had, basically stuffed me and against my will, really, the person that they had stuck me with as my manager, Jank removed that person as my boss and made me the sole person, the sole person in charge, the executive producer of, at that time, TYT Politics. I think they call it something else now. So after they removed that person and I got back my editorial freedom, I said, you want to know something? I want to see how it goes at the Young Turks now that he's removed this person that was so onerous to my journalism, that was restraining me, that did not care to cover stories like Flint and these stories that I had a passion for. So I went back to Glenn and I said, I'm sorry, that I originally reached out to you, and now I'm kind of, reneging on that. But, Jank, just last minute, they pulled this person off TYT Politics. They made me executive producer, and I want to see how it goes over the next few months if things get better. And he was very gracious. He wasn't upset at all that after me reaching out to him and him expressing interest in me joining the Intercept, he said, I totally respect that. Thanks for being honest, blah, blah, blah. And that was that. And obviously, months later, I was fired from the Young Turks, and that's a whole different discussion. But my point in sharing that is, I've worked for Fox News. I've worked for MSNBC. I've worked for the Young Turks. I've worked for I've worked for digital outlets. And I'll tell you, there are very few people out there that would literally leave a job where they were making $500,000 a year out of conviction. There's very few people that would leave a job out of conviction who were making $50,000 a year. I don't know Glenn's financial situation. I don't know if he could afford to leave and not have that salary. I don't know. I know he's got children. Who knows? I don't know his personal situation. But to leave that stability at the Intercept, at a conviction that you are seeing this institution that you helped create, that was your baby, basically morph into something totally indistinguishable. Whether you love Glenn Greenwald, whether you hate Glenn Greenwald, whatever, because he's a polarizing figure to some. That takes courage. That takes conviction. And many of the things Glenn Greenwald said are basic things that have gone wild in corporate media. Any critical story now of Joe Biden or Democrats It's like Trump has reflexively said fake news. Well, the Democrats are matching fake Trump's authoritarian fake news response with Russian disinformation. Oh, what's the evidence that it's Russian disinformation? Boo! Censorship. They just say Russian disinformation, and that's it. The corporate media moves on. Is there any evidence that there's Russian disinformation behind the Hunter Biden emails? No. But that's the new, if Trump is the fake news, and that's Trump's magic, cloak over his critical stories of him, now the critical stories of Biden or the Democratic Party, they just say Russian disinformation. It's truly alarming. It's truly alarming. And I can tell you from personal experience, okay? Jen and I, she's not on right now, but the co-founder of Status Coup, we uncovered a year ago, October 2019, we uncovered in Flint evidence that former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder was involved directly with the cover-up of the Flint water crisis, that he himself helped preside over his administration, covering up a deadly Legionella outbreak. We're talking about the deadly coronavirus right now. There's a deadly bacterial outbreak of Legionella in Flint, a deadly waterborne outbreak, and that several weeks before his reelection as governor, he himself was involved in helping to cover it up so that that information wouldn't get to residents so that they could stop drinking that water. We also found out that he was warned before they switched the water in Flint that it would be dangerous if Flint used the Flint River as a drinking water source. He let it go on anyway. We also found out that there was a privatization scheme and financial fraud involved in the Flint water crisis. Jen and I probably reached out to at least 50 outlets, including the Intercept, with this story. In any sane environment, in any sane journalistic environment, if you had evidence that a governor was directly involved with the biggest environmental cover-up of the 21st century, I do not say that lightly. This is the biggest environmental cover-up of the 21st century. If we had a healthy media system, we would be swatting off. There would be a line around the block of outlets that wanted this story. Originally, I spoke with the Rolling Stone. They wanted it at first, and then they moonwalked away. I mean, we spoke with many outlets. I literally had outlets saying to me, is there any connection to Trump? I said, well, I mean, Flint happened under Obama. Trump hasn't made it any better, but no, there's no connection to Trump. Oh, okay. Yeah. Nice story. Hope you get it somewhere. They literally wanted us to basically create an angle or a connection to Donald Trump to publish it. I joked, but I'm half serious. I think if I could prove that Vladimir Putin was involved somehow in the Flint water crisis, the New York Times would have wanted it. MSNBC would have wanted it. Yes, Rolling Stone walked away from the Flint story. Eventually, the story ended up being published in Vice. Credit to Vice. It wasn't the easiest. Frankly, it was delayed by about 6 months. Certain parts were watered down, but at least Vice saw the importance of this story, because this story is not just about Flint. It's not just about Flint, Michigan, and the people of Flint. It's about what kind of country do we live in? Do we even live in a country? Do we live in a country where it is tolerable that people can accept and move on from the government poisoning its own citizens and then leaving them to die for years? 6.5 years later, the water is not clean in Flint. It doesn't matter what the data they have put out says. Jen and I broke a separate story that they cooked up the data and the water testing. But why this is connected to what Glenn's talking about? The media, especially media that has been hijacked by corporations that own it, MSNBC, CNN, they're owned by multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates. The New York Times, which in advertising calls itself independent, has wealthy investors. The Washington Post is owned by the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos. All of these outlets are not interested in the downtrodden. They're not interested in consistent investigative journalism. They're not interested in investigative journalism that will expose power if exposing that power is against their political ideology or their parent companies that own them political benefit. CNN is not interested in investigative journalism if that investigative journalism will harm its parent company, AT&T. The owner of the president of CNN, Jeff Zucker, it was exposed, was literally, while Donald Trump was running for office, in addition to giving him billions of dollars of free airtime, was literally talking to Trump's allies about, after the elections, giving him a weekly primetime show. MSNBC has literally morphed from back in the day, kind of progressive. Remember when Olbermann was sane and was giving stinging monologues against President Bush and the Iraq War? It has morphed into basically a rehabilitation home for warmongers, war criminals, and neocons, with essentially the Glenn Becks of the left. Rachel Maddow, who I used to love when she was sane and had some integrity, has become a deranged lunatic, crying and warning about Russians hacking into the electric grid and freezing us during the polar vortex. Warning about, the Russian boogeyman under your pillow, while Flint still doesn't have clean water 6.5 years later. She doesn't say a damn word about that anymore. While Native American reservations are literally on their reservations, have the Trump administration drilling for oil on their reservations. While public housing units in New York City right now, as the weather is getting colder, have no gas. And Mayor de Blasio ain't doing anything about it. And beloved resistance hero Andrew Cuomo isn't doing anything about it. Right here in New York City. While 15,000 workers were laid off by General Motors last year, we went out in the field. We covered it. We interviewed those union workers that were laid off after General Motors got a $51 billion bailout from Obama. While black men are being executed all over this country. Yeah, they'll cover the protest for a few days, and then they're done. While corruption reigns supreme, while the Democratic Party has been hijacked by Wall Street and fossil fuckers and big real estate and big pharma and Silicon Valley, the Republican Party is just as treacherous, if not more. Our government has been sold to the highest bidder, and then people like Joe Biden have the audacity to go on stage and say, "This is America. We're not Denmark." During a deadly pandemic where tens of millions of people have no health care right now, have no jobs. Since July, do you know that we are now over 90 days since July that expanded $600 unemployment expired? For 3 months, American citizens during a deadly pandemic they had no control over, that frankly the president squandered. If you're here and you're a COVID truther, this isn't the place for you. Trump is responsible for tens of thousands of additional deaths that didn't need to happen. During a deadly pandemic, the Democratic presidential candidate is saying, "Oh no, he literally said during the debate, nobody caught this but me." He literally said during the debate, you have a human right. You have a human right to affordable health care, meaning you have a right to pay to live. You have a right to pay to live. Something is not a human right if there is a barrier to entry. During a deadly pandemic, the Republican Party nor the Democratic Party has given the masses health care. During a deadly pandemic, the government has not just covered people's payrolls like they're doing in Europe right now. During a deadly pandemic, you have corporate vultures that control and buy our politicians, like that scumbag judge from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary. You have literally corporate vultures stealing PPP money meant for hurting small businesses like my parents. You know how much of that PPP money has been diverted to donors of the Democrat and Republican Party? Joe Biden, during the primary, literally lied. He lied about meeting with Nelson Mandela in apartheid South Africa when Mandela was freed. He lied about being on the front lines of civil rights sit-ins, which he never participated in any. He's lied about his role in the Iraq War. He's lied about pushing NAFTA. He's lied about half of his record. Frankly, I love Bernie. Bernie let him get away scot-free. Bernie never challenged him the way he needed to be challenged. And the corporate media covers none of this. I could go on. I could rant till 10 o'clock at night. The corporate media covers none of this. Why? Why? Because A, they don't care. They're all a bunch of geeks that only care about the horse race. B, most of them are doing very well financially and are completely detached because they live in New York and D.C. for the most part from the suffering and pain in Flint and other communities. And number three, and most important, because if they covered these things, it would be a direct threat to the status quo. I don't want to be cheesy, but that is literally why we created Status Coup. There needs to be a status coup, a coup d'etat. I ain't talking violence. I'm talking about a journalistic coup d'etat. And let me tell you something. I love Glenn Greenwald. We did not have Pierre Omidyar's money to start this. The Intercept did. I'm not knocking him. That's great. If we could have got Pierre's money, we probably would have taken it. If he would have given us the editorial freedom that Glenn says he has gotten from Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay, who's kind of dubious in his own way. We, with our fingernails, have clawed for the last 3 years. We have been suppressed by the very platform you're watching us on now. If this is the first time you're seeing us, it's by design. They don't put us in people's recommended videos. Even our own subscribers don't know when we're live. That's why we built this text message list so that when we are live, you'll get a text message. Because literally when we're live, we have people showing up an hour later saying, I didn't get a notification from YouTube, even though I signed up for notifications. We have subscribers literally being unsubscribed. I was live in Louisville. That was another story we covered that very few did. I was live before the announcement that there would be no charges against the officers that killed Breonna Taylor. I was live interviewing Breonna Taylor's aunt, Bianca Austin, one of the most painful interviews I've ever done. I had to keep it together. You know how many people we had live watching me interviewing Breonna Taylor's aunt? Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old black woman who was a hero, literally saving lives as a nurse during the coronavirus, who was murdered while sleeping by out-of-control police. We had like 150 live viewers because nobody saw it, because YouTube's burying this channel. And I'm taking a risk because I do believe, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I actually spoke with someone at YouTube who basically admitted it. YouTube has a list of outlets that they throttle. Do you know how frustrating it is as a journalist who works 7 days a week? I've been working 7 days a week. I go live on Sundays too and prepare for that live stream on Sunday. You know how frustrating it is as a journalist to do the right thing, to cover the stories that matter, and for people not to see it, for people to know that you don't even exist? Literally, I left the Young Turks in fall of 2017. Do you know, to this day, if I go on The Hill, Rising with Crystal Ball, if I go on Jimmy Dore's show, I love both of them. I always love going on them. It's a huge help, by the way, to go on those platforms because, frankly, Jimmy had the benefit of starting and growing before YouTube changed its algorithm to screw independent. Sure, he's been hurt, but he didn't start after they changed its algorithm. Secular Talk, all these platforms, they started and were able to grow before the censorship. People say, Jordan, stop begging for likes. I'm begging you to like the stream because it's the only way for it to be seen. For some reason, when you get more likes on your live stream, it shows up in more people's feeds that aren't currently watching it. But literally, I left TYT 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago. Literally, if I go on Crystal Ball, if I go on Jimmy Dore, literally the next few days, I see comment after comment under videos. Jordan, you're back. Jordan, I didn't know this existed. Status Coup has existed for almost 3 years. We've been doing this on YouTube for almost 3 years and they don't see it. So Glenn Greenwald and his story, it's not only about censorship of specific stories, like the Intercept censoring his story. What it's about is platforms are literally hiding outlets to stop dissenting views. Platforms like YouTube, which is owned by Google, and Twitter and Facebook are literally rigging the information game. That's what this is. They're rigging the information game to basically stop information that challenges the status quo. And you know who this hurts most of all? Yes, it hurts me. It hurts Jen. It hurts Status Quo's ability to grow. It hurts the people of Flint. It hurts the people of Queens. And the story I just covered there, where low-income black people have no gas while it's growing cold and can't cook meals. It hurts the protesters on the ground that we covered and give a voice to because people don't see it. It hurts the Native Americans whose stories that I have covered because people don't see their stories. I said it years ago and I'll say it today. Independent media needs to come together. There's too many egos in independent media. There's too many people doing their own thing. There's too many people going live at the same exact time others are going live. There's too many people that are living on their own island rather than joining forces to create one unstoppable network. It doesn't mean you can't have your own individual identities. It doesn't mean you can't have your own and grow independently. But I don't want to borrow from Hillary Clinton. We would be a hell of a lot stronger together than separate. And this censorship that we're starting to see, it's only going to get worse, folks. They're going to throttle us. Frankly, I've been talking to Jen, the co-founder of Status Coup, to figure out what is our contingency plan. Because whether it's us or others, I don't think it is out of the realm of possibility that one day we are removed from this platform. And if that happens, how would you even know? How would you even know where to go watch us? Where would we go? How would we get the 90,000 subscribers we have now, almost 91,000? How would we get them over to wherever we go next? We don't have the money for advertising. We have never taken a cent from a bank. We have never taken a cent from a fossil fuel company, a real estate developer, a lobbyist, a Democratic Party lifer. We had a small initial investor of $50,000. That was from a viewer. And that basically bought us the initial equipment and brought on our initial cameraman. That was it. And we're so thankful to that viewer who invested in us at the beginning. Other than that, it's been almost 3 years of GoFundMe. Thank you, by the way, $10, Cecilia, Robin. And you want to know something? And I'm going to say it, and I'm going to name names here. You got outlets like the Young Turks flooding you. I mean, I'm getting 2 or 3 emails a day now with them fundraising and asking for money. And what exactly are the people giving money to the Young Turks or other outlets? What's their money being spent on? Nothing. A slightly edgier, coked-out version of MSNBC. That's what TYT has turned into. And that's what many of the same outlets, claiming to be resistance fighters, claiming to be independent journalism, that's what they've become. Slightly edgier, coked-out versions of MSNBC. Do you know, Jen, I don't want to speak for her, Jen has 2 children. One has special needs. Working here, she makes less money than she would. She's a very, very smart and a very, very experienced marketing person. She could be making double, triple what she's making here. She works here out of the vision to cover the downtrodden, to expose corruption, to expose injustice, and be in the field exposing corruption. Most of the stories we cover are not sexy. Most of the stories we cover will not go viral. But we do it because no one else is doing it. And you know what? If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's what I'm talking about. Millions and millions of people have been laid off. Millions more have had their hours cut. We're kind of living in a quiet, silent depression. What do you call 45 million people filing for unemployment?
$1,200 in 3 months makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
Everybody should be paying attention to what's going on because this is happening in every county, not just Louisville, Kentucky. And that's why the world is like, wait a minute, enough's enough.
And one thing I do know is if you're not sitting at the table, you are on the menu. And it seems like we continue to be on the menu.
I don't want to have to lose everything that we worked really hard for. We've been struggling for 5 years, and then we finally got everything together, and it just instantly went away.
Literally driving across the country during the pandemic, talking to people, finding out what's going on.
There are people such as yourself and other people that are telling the true story of what is happening.
All of these black people have been assassinated by police in this city, and none of them have been brought to justice.
People don't really care about those things in places where, you know, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Minneapolis, we're Louisville, Kentucky.
If somebody calls you screaming for help in 911, they never treated her. They never came to her apartment, nothing.
Vote, and do what's right in your heart, because change comes from within. So as long as your heart is pure and you're doing what's right, that's what matters.
So you might say, Jordan, you know, I thought this was about Glenn Greenwald. Stop asking for money. I can't tell you how much. There's very few things that trigger me in life. But there is one thing that really triggers me. Thank you so much, Michelle, 50 SEK from Sweden. Thank you, Kushrinata, $5. Add David Dole, Progressive Voice, and the Rational National to that list. You, Kyle, Jimmy, Lee Camp, and Tim Black seem to be the honest among us. One of those people isn't honest, but I digress. When people say stop asking for money, I want to literally come through this screen and slap you in the face. I won't do it, but that's what I want to do. Because I don't think people truly understand, and I don't think people truly understand that you can't have it both ways. You can't sit here and rightly shit on the corporate media all day and then not be willing to help build the independent media that could actually truly counteract the corporate media propaganda. You got to pick a side. If you have disdain for corporate media, if you believe that corporate media and the censorship that we have experienced, that Glenn has resigned because of, is dangerous, if you think corporate media is literally the biggest obstacle, I do, in the way of progressive change, in the way of Medicare for all, free public college, ending fracking, banning private prisons, stopping these endless wars, stopping the mass gentrification. If you believe that corporate media is the biggest roadblock in front of that, and I believe it is, because how is the status quo maintained? By covering up the injustice, corruption, and misery out there. The corporate media doesn't just not cover those things, they cover it up. Then you have to be willing to be part of the solution to counteract it. I believe if you have a choice of one outlet, because everybody's working, and a lot of us are unemployed, and a lot of us are struggling. So if you could only fund one independent outlet, if you only have an extra $5 a month, $10 a month, I believe it should be us, and I'll tell you why. It's not a knock on anyone else. It's not a knock on Jimmy. It's not a knock on Kyle. It's not a knock on anyone. But I believe that if we don't show what's happening, not just from a studio, which is fine, there's plenty of room and value in that. But if we don't actually go out, then we don't actually expose the corruption and injustice at the root. At the root. It's easy to pontificate. It's a lot harder to go out there and build sources. I'll give you a perfect example. I'm not going to get into what it is, but I've been digging into something over the last week. And I just had a person, a source that I'm trying to get in contact that I think could help, call me, and he left a voicemail and say, I can't talk to you because I'm afraid to talk to you. I'm afraid something would happen to me. Traveling to the place this person lives, showing him my previous work, looking this person in the eye, and telling him there is no way it would ever be attributed to you, this information. I would sooner go to jail, and you could record this, you could save this. I would sooner go to jail than ever reveal a source of my reporting. Jen would do the same thing. And we are not stupid. We are very smart in how we protect sources. But it would take me probably going to where this person is to get this information. And if I could get this information, frankly, this has the potential to put people in jail. Why I'm telling you that, it costs money to do those things. It would be a lot easier. It would be a lot easier if we just sold out. You want to know something? We're at 91,000 subscribers. I think if 2.5 years ago I started Status Coup by doing 30 videos on Donald Trump a week, we'd probably be at 500,000 subscribers by now. I'd probably be making a lot more money than I'm making. Jen would be too. We'd probably be maybe, I don't know, we're at 1,687 members right now. We just gained a member. Welcome new Status Coup member. Aldo just signed up. Le'Veon just signed up. Join Aldo and Le'Veon as a member. Statuscoup.com/join. We'd be making a lot more money. We'd probably have a lot more Twitter followers because we would have just joined in the groupthink, Trump derangement resistance. And I'd be a miserable fuck. And so would Jen. We do cover things and do things that are not in our immediate financial interest. Why? Because I believe life is short. I believe that as an individual and as a journalistic institution, you cannot look the other way to the actual scandals. Not Russia, Flint. Not Russia, Standing Rock. Not Russia, Detroit. Not Russia, Botham John. Not Russia, GM laying 15,000 workers off after getting a $51 billion bailout. Not Russia, Shark Tank judge Kevin O'Leary stealing PPP money meant for small businesses. Not Russia, one of the first stories we covered at Status Coup, American citizens literally sitting in tree houses that they built on their property, literally building tree houses and then tree sitting so that fossil fuckers, fossil fuel companies will not knock down their trees to build a ticking time bomb under their property, i.e. natural gas pipelines. Do you know that we covered a mother and daughter duo that literally protested atop their trees for over 30 days without coming down? They had people around them cheering them on for 30 days so that a greedy oil company would not knock down their trees, seizing their eminent domain and putting a natural gas pipeline under their home. You know how many times CNN went out there? MSNBC? I think the Washington Post did one story on it. That's a fucking outrage. LJL, $25. Keep it up. You guys are doing amazing. Do you know that the New York Times, when Jen and I went to them with a Flint story that proved Governor Rick Snyder, literally, and his administration cheated on the water testing. They literally did the testing wrong to get lower numbers and then passed off that testing as somehow showing Flint's lead problem was solved. and then shut down the remaining water stations that desperately poor and poisoned people depended on? You know, the New York Times, instead of actually doing the story with us, tried to steal it and then didn't end up doing it at all. It's not just direct censorship like Glenn experienced with the Intercept. We have glorified public relations people masquerading as journalists, suppressing the real stories and corruption going on in this country. As long as I got air in my lungs, as long as we have viewers helping to support this journalism, we will keep going. I will follow up with the Glenn Greenwald story, see what the developments are. Apparently somebody told me he's now published the emails, so I'll look into that. Jen is coming up here, my co-founder, so we will be live tomorrow, her and I. Also, tentatively, hopefully it happens, I will be interviewing Chris Hedges tomorrow. So we'll have that interview too. And again, a reminder, we will be on the ground on election day in the field in Pennsylvania. I know that there's some other competition. I know Joe Rogan and Kyle are going to be live. Jimmy, I'm sure, will be live. Hey, watch whatever you want. I hope you'll watch us because we'll be in the trenches showing you what's going on. The good, the ugly, the corrupt. Whether it's Democrats being corrupt, Republicans being corrupt, we will be out there. Please, take it off the glasses for this one. I'm asking you, if you're new here and you've only seen our work today, consider subscribe to the channel. Consider $5 a month and join us. statuscoup.com/join. You get access to our members-only Discord. You also will be on our members-only call once a month. We do other behind-the-scenes videos for members. But beyond the perks that you get, I truly believe, you might think $5 doesn't matter. Let me tell you why it does matter. Every single person that signs up at $5 a month to actually support the in-the-field journalism, and that in-the-field journalism isn't cheap. There's hotels, there's flights, there's rent-a-cars, there's equipment, advertising, social media, marketing. It costs a lot of money to do this, and the travel is a cost that we have that a lot of other outlets don't have. God bless all the other progressive commentators. They're sitting in a studio. They're not traveling. For me, a camera person, on the lowest minimum, it costs $2,000 for a trip. Most times it costs more than that. Consider signing up at $5 a month. I promise you, we will make you proud. On the Glenn Greenwald story, we will see if the Intercept comes out with their side of the story. So far, I've seen some Intercept reporters commenting and kind of a back and forth between some of the reporters from the Intercept and an internal squabble. But say what you want about Glenn Greenwald, it ain't easy to walk away from $500,000 a year. It ain't easy to walk away from the outlet you created. It ain't easy to go from a pretty nice salary to Substack and like a self-blog. It takes conviction to do that, and I respect him for doing that. Let me take your questions, comments, concerns before I go. Let me also see, what are we at now? Believe we're almost at 91,000 subscribers, so that's exciting. Oh, we passed 91,000 subscribers. Woohoo! Show you the back end. 91,070. We are now at 91,070 subscribers. Hey, who knows? Could we possibly, if YouTube will just get the hell out of the way and stop hiding this channel, could we possibly hit 100,000 subscribers before the new year? Woohoo! There's my wife. All right. George, $2. Status Coup, worth every penny. Denver, I got a buddy that built a mobile living space out of a used ambulance. Okay. Eric, been a member for a few months and won't ever turn back for Flint coverage alone. Never mind your freedom of press coverage. Great stuff. Thank you. John Jacobson, it takes balls. I agree. Danny, ding, ding, ding. Loler, Status Coup, that was weird. I'm also named Dimitri. Okay. Eric, thanks for being here. Let's see, did I miss any others? Chris, $5. Status Coup goes in the field to uncover the news. Others mostly just reread it. Status, real. Support real journalism. Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate that. Susan, $10. Thanks, Jordan. Your on-site interviews are priceless. Hashtag free media matters. Appreciate it. Windy Melly, $10. Your opinion on AOC being okay with Biden being pro-fracking and calling young voters realistic and pragmatic. AOC being okay with Biden being pro-fracking. And listen, I've seen AOC's interviews, okay? Let's just say AOC is a little different as a politician than she was as a candidate. Shall I say that? I'm not saying she's corrupt. I don't think she's corrupt. I don't think she's a sellout. But she has definitely been minding her P's and Q's, shall I say that, in deference to Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders has been clearly, frankly, twisting himself into a human pretzel to support Joe Biden. I believe that you can say, I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Joe Biden, and here's why you should too, if you're AOC and Bernie Sanders, while also challenging Joe Biden. I think AOC is wrong to kind of toe the line, claim, well, I think we could push him left. You're not moving Joe Biden left. Are you kidding me? He's a Republican country club dinosaur. And I think she should say, although I'm supporting Joe Biden because I want to get rid of Donald Trump, Joe Biden is dangerously wrong on fracking, among other things. And if he doesn't wise up about fracking, we're not going to have a planet in 30 years. I think that is what she should have been saying, if that answers your question. Jay Sand, $20. Appreciate it, Jay Sand. LJL, $25. Keep it up. You guys are doing amazing. I really appreciate it. Monica, $5. Gino, Fast, $4.99. Politicians ask me for donations a lot more than Status Coup does. I tell them, sorry, I support Status Coup, not the status quo. Gino, I am screenshotting that. I am screenshotting that super chat, and I am definitely using it in marketing because that is the greatest thing I've heard today. Possibly all month. Possibly all year. Possibly in my entire life. Let me read it one more time. Politicians ask me for donations a lot more than Status Coup does. I tell them, sorry, I support Status Coup, not the status quo. Damn right. Christopher, $5. Well, what sets Status Coup apart from the others is their on-the-ground investigation. This is hard work. Trust me, 2 back surgeries, it is hard work. Thank you guys so much for the super chats. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for the GoFundMe donations. Another one just came in, Daniel. To be clear, for those of you that are new, we don't actually have $124,000 in the bank. If we did, I'd be doing naked jumping jacks. We don't, much less. What that is the cumulative amount that we have raised since launching this GoFundMe in September 2018. We actually were blocked from going live on YouTube for 3 months in 2019, so we didn't promote the GoFundMe while we were blocked. So we've really done this in about 2 years, raising $124,000. The largest donation we ever got was $5,000 from a viewer. We've never taken money from any of the nefarious sources that we all disdain. And we have spent this money in real time to fund on-the-ground reporting all over this country, to fund freelance journalists to go live when we couldn't be there, to fund new equipment. Through you guys, we were able to buy a top-of-the-line $25,000 live view, which is the equipment we use to go live around the country. It's expensive, and you guys did it for us. To actually have an advertising budget, which has helped us grow our Twitter. We're now at 51,000 on Twitter. Marketing costs. Just a lot of costs that you have no idea about and I won't bother you with. So we appreciate every donation, big or small. And every new member makes a big, big difference. Wow, we just got new member Mike, new member Peter, new member Dean. Holy cow. We are now at 1,691 members. Maybe we can get another 9 signups so we could get back to 1,700. By the way, we were almost at 2,000 before coronavirus hit. Honestly, we've lost a lot of members who have had to cut costs, which we totally understand. So we're excited, every new member we get, to get back towards that goal of 2,000 and then more. And the beauty of membership, honestly, and I think membership is what would help us avoid the fate that Glenn Greenwald ultimately is claiming that happened to him at the Intercept. What's wonderful about paid membership It liberates you as a journalist. I don't have to worry about a boss over me. I don't have to worry about censorship. I don't have to worry about what happened at the Young Turks with, my then boss Jank fighting me on going back to Flint. Because the more we grow, paid membership, we have the stable money to follow the vision that Jen and I have. Nobody's censoring Jen and I because we're the bosses. Our bosses are you, the viewers. You tell us what you want. You tell us the stories that you appreciate. We follow our vision, but we also get your feedback. And the best way of doing that is to have the stable revenue coming in. It's the best I could say. So, $5,000 donations was from the Koch brothers. Well, the Koch brother, one of them's gone now. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. To tell you the truth, it was from a celebrity. I'm not going to say who, because I don't know if they wanted it to be public, but a progressive celebrity, let's say, that I think you guys like. So, Biden is a traitor. Do your research. Okay. No one should tolerate censorship of any kind. Go, Glenn. Glenn seems like a great dude. I agree. We love a knot. My wife cheering. Odd question and sort of outside status coup purview, but I thought I heard on Telesur there was an attack on a refinery in Venezuela. Was it old information or new? I've been live for 2 hours, so if it happened, it might have happened while I was live. I'll look into it. Kelly said, we love her, my wife. So, all right. That's all I got for today. Thank you so much for the super chats, for the member signups. Keep signing up. Statuscoup.com/join. Once again, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as a burnt cup of Starbucks coffee a month. Or $5 a month, 16 cents a day comes out to $5 a month. If you got 16 cents a day, spend it so we could have a status coup of the United Corporations of America. Again, we'll be live on the ground in Pennsylvania for election night. Everything I'm seeing is Pennsylvania is going to be the critical state. Trump's only chance is if he wins Pennsylvania and Florida, frankly. So definitely sign up. Statuscoup.com/join. Jen and I will be live tomorrow. She'll be here with me, and we'll be live again throughout the weekend. Thank you for watching, and I'll have updates as the news develops on Glenn Greenwald's resignation. Thank you for watching. Peace out.